Smoke fills the air. Buildings lie in ruins. The streets of Kiev echo with the desperate cries of a nation on the brink. This is not a scene from a dystopian novel. This is Ukraine, 2025. 3 years into the conflict, the country teeters on the precipice. Battered by war, corruption, and a world that seems content to watch it burn. Protests erupt daily, a tangled mess of anger and despair. They demand peace, they demand accountability, they demand Zelensky's resignation. The Ukrainian president, once hailed as a hero, now faces accusations of incompetence and authoritarianism. His promises of peace and prosperity lie shattered, buried under the rubble of a broken nation. The world watches captivated and horrified as the tragedy unfolds. But beneath the surface of this conflict, a darker truth festers, a truth the media refuses to tell, a truth of hidden agendas, power struggles, and a silent global elite complicit in the suffering of millions. This is the story of the hidden truths of the Ukrainian crisis, a story of power, betrayal, and the fight for the soul of a nation. In the shadows of the Kremlin, a master strategist weaves his web. Vladimir Putin, the enigmatic leader of Russia, has long sought to restore his country to its former glory, and Ukraine is the key to his ambitions. But Putin's tactics go far beyond tanks and missiles. His is a campaign of disinformation, manipulation, and the systematic erosion of Ukrainian democracy. Putin understands the power of division. He has poured fuel on the flames of Ukraine's internal conflicts, exploiting existing tensions and funding separatist movements. His cyber army wages a relentless war of propaganda, spreading misinformation and sowing discord among the Ukrainian people. Zelensky, for all his flaws, recognizes the enemy within. He has accused Russia of orchestrating a campaign to destabilize Ukraine, of waging a hybrid war designed to break the nation's spirit. But his warnings have largely fallen on deaf ears, drowned out by the clamor of internal dissent and the deafening silence of the international community. Putin plays a dangerous game, one with global consequences. But as the world focuses on the military conflict, the real battle for Ukraine is being fought in the shadows, a battle for the hearts and minds of its people. Volodymyr Zelensky, the comedian-turned-wartime president, cuts a tragic figure. Once a beacon of hope, his star has waned under the relentless pressure of war and internal strife. Accusations of corruption and authoritarianism have plagued his administration, fueling the flames of discontent among the Ukrainian people. His approval ratings have plummeted, a stark reflection of the growing disillusionment with his leadership. The man who once united a nation now faces a crisis of legitimacy. His authority challenged by a populace weary of war and disillusioned by broken promises. Critics point to his handling of the war, his inability to secure a decisive victory, or negotiate a lasting peace. They accuse him of prioritizing his own political survival over the needs of his people, of clinging to power while Ukraine burns. Whether these accusations are true or the result of Russian propaganda is a matter of debate. But one thing is clear, Zelensky's grip on power is weakening, and his ability to lead Ukraine through this crisis is increasingly in doubt. As the crisis in Ukraine deepens, the silence from the global elite is deafening. Where are the impassioned pleas for peace? Where are the sanctions targeting Russia's oligarchs? Where is the outrage at the human cost of this conflict? The United Nations, once a symbol of international cooperation, appears paralyzed, its resolutions toothless and ineffective. The world's most powerful nations seem content to watch from the sidelines, offering words of condemnation but little in the way of concrete action. This inaction has not gone unnoticed. Across the globe, protests erupt, demanding an end to the violence and a more robust response from the international community. They accuse their leaders of prioritizing economic interests over human lives, of turning a blind eye to the suffering of the Ukrainian people. The silence is deafening, and it speaks volumes. It speaks of a world order more concerned with maintaining the status quo than upholding justice. A world where power trumps principle, and where the suffering of millions is simply a pawn in a larger geopolitical game. Section 5. Backroom Deals. Behind the scenes, away from the glare of the media spotlight, a different kind of war is being waged. In opulent boardrooms and clandestine meetings, diplomats and power brokers negotiate the fate of Ukraine. These are the secret negotiations, shrouded in secrecy and fueled by self-interest. Rumors swirl of a grand bargain, a deal that would see Ukraine cede territory in exchange for peace. The details remain murky, but the implications are clear. Ukraine's future is being decided not on the battlefield but in the shadows, by actors with their own agendas. The United States, once a staunch ally of Ukraine, has seemingly shifted its stance. The election of Donald Trump to a second term has ushered in an era of American isolationism, a retreat from global leadership that has left Ukraine vulnerable. Trump's personal ties to Putin have raised questions about his commitment to defending Ukraine's sovereignty, fueling speculation that he may be willing to sacrifice Ukraine's interests to appease the Russian bear. The truth, as always, is elusive. But one thing is certain: the fate of Ukraine is being decided not by its people but by powerful forces operating in the shadows. The war in Ukraine has exposed a deep rift in the Western alliance. While Europe has largely united in its condemnation of Russia and its support for Ukraine, the United States has charted a different course. The Trump administration's decision to withdraw from NATO and its cozy relationship with Putin have sown discord among the transatlantic partners, weakening the West's resolve in the face of Russian aggression. European leaders have expressed alarm at America's retreat from global leadership, fearing that it will embolden Putin and other autocrats around the world. They have pledged to increase their own military spending and to take a more assertive role in defending European security. But it remains to be seen whether Europe can fill the void left by the United States. The continent is grappling with its own internal divisions, from the rise of populism to the ongoing economic crisis. And without the military might and economic clout of the United States, Europe's ability to deter Russian aggression is questionable at best. The war in Ukraine has shattered the illusion of Western unity, exposing the cracks in the foundation of the post-Cold War order. The consequences of this division are far-reaching, and they extend far beyond the borders of Ukraine. In the digital age, information is a weapon, and the war in Ukraine is being fought on the battlefields of cyberspace as fiercely as it is on the ground. Disinformation and propaganda are rife, disseminated through social media, state-controlled media outlets, and a vast network of bots and trolls. Distinguishing truth from falsehood has become increasingly difficult. Both sides of the conflict accuse each other of spreading lies and manipulating public opinion. The media, once seen as a neutral arbiter of information, is now viewed with suspicion, accused of bias, sensationalism, and outright fabrication. This information war has had a profound impact on public opinion, both within Ukraine and internationally. It has sown division and distrust, making it difficult to have a reasoned and informed debate about the conflict. It has also made it easier for those in power to control the narrative, to shape public perception of the war to suit their own agendas. In this environment of information overload and uncertainty, it is more important than ever to be critical consumers of information, to question everything, to verify sources, and to be wary of those who seek to profit from division and discord. The specter of a wider conflict looms large over the crisis in Ukraine. The war has already drawn in major powers, with the United States and its NATO allies providing military and financial support to Ukraine, while Russia has backed the separatists with troops and weapons. Tensions between Russia and the West are at their highest point since the Cold War. Both sides have engaged in dangerous military exercises, testing each other's resolve and raising the risk of an accidental confrontation. The potential for miscalculation is high, and the consequences of a direct military clash between NATO and Russia are too terrible to contemplate. Adding to the volatility is the growing nuclear threat. Russia has repeatedly rattled its nuclear saber, warning the West against intervening directly in the conflict. While few believe that Putin would actually risk a nuclear war, the possibility, however remote, cannot be ignored. The world watches with bated breath, hoping that cooler heads will prevail, but the drums of war are beating louder, and the path to peace seems treacherous and uncertain. The conflict in Ukraine is a tragedy for all involved. It is a story of suffering, loss, and the human cost of geopolitical gamesmanship. But it is also a story of resilience, of courage in the face of adversity, and of a people determined to fight for their freedom and their future. As the war grinds on, it is easy to become desensitized to the violence, to the human toll of the conflict. But we must never forget that behind the headlines, behind the statistics, are real people whose lives have been torn apart by this senseless war. The truth about the Ukraine crisis is complex and multifaceted. It is a story of power, betrayal, and the struggle for the soul of a nation. It is a story that is still being written. and its outcome remains uncertain. But one thing is clear: the world cannot afford to look away. We must demand accountability from our leaders, we must support the Ukrainian people, and we must never stop fighting for peace.